Morning, all. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet for your Tuesday, April the 15th. Also, 10 games tonight in the National Hockey League. Going to be a busy night, and the busiest night I'm going to have watching hockey until October. So, there you go. But at any rate, let's start off with the news of the day. We'll start at the top here. That's usually how this works. Darnell Nurse is going to have a hearing for a cross-check on Byfield, which was reckless, kind of stupid, and yeah, totally understandable. The Department of Player Safety would want to have a chat with Darnell Nurse, and we'll see how many games he gets suspended. When it's a hearing, it is a suspension. If it's going to be a fine, they just announce the fine. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on how many games you think Nurse is going to get. Again, it was reckless. It was just dumb. I don't understand it, but at any rate, that's done, and it will be interesting to see how the Oilers adjust if he misses a playoff game, if they go that far. I know they don't like to suspend players for playoff games, so we'll see how that ends up going. Quinn Hughes, last night, became at least tied for the all-time lead amongst points by a defenseman in the Vancouver Canucks history. With point number 409, he ties Alex Edler. The Vancouver Canucks have never had a defenseman like Quinn Hughes when it comes to a points producer, and so it took Hughes a lot fewer games to reach that point total than it took Edler, and totally understandable that that's the case. So it is very important this offseason that the Canucks do whatever they have to make sure that Quinn Hughes is happy and wants to stick around because, yeah, the other option I'm not a huge fan of. So last night's game between Montreal and Chicago featured some controversy. Patrick Laine takes a shootout attempt, it fails. And then they're like, actually, that one before that attempt before that by Nazar, that went in the net. The funny part being, I had already written Nazar's name on the board before they did. Like, I guess I didn't hear the officials, wave off or say it wasn't a goal. When a shootout's on, I just go, yeah, goal, not a goal. I've got the 65-inch TV, and I'm like, yay far from it. And so I knew that puck was in the net. Now, apparently what happened was the Situation Room knew that it was in the net and informed the off-ice officials in Montreal prior to Laine making the shootout attempt. So it's the on-ice officials that did not get said information or had already sent Laine at the time they were provided said information. So Toronto got this right. The off-ice officials knew that Nazar's goal was in the goal. It is the on-ice officials that seem to have messed this up a little bit. It's the right call. It's not like you can say, well, it wasn't actually a goal. It's the right call. And we've never seen a situation like this before that I can remember. To me, it sounds like the on-ice officials might have been a little more rushed in, all right, your turn kind of thing, rather than, okay, was that in the net and double checking. So, yeah, Chicago wins that one in a shootout. I think the embarrassment for the Montreal Canadiens wasn't that they lost in the shootout. It was that they had a 2-0 lead at home against the Chicago Blackhawks in a game they had to win in order to secure a playoff spot, and they didn't. So that's the embarrassment, not how they messed up this call when they didn't. They had it right. The on-ice officials made that mess. So NHL Central Scouting's number one draft pick is not a surprise. The number one rated prospect is Matthew Schaefer, defenseman. That was the expectation. Number 2 on the list is Michael Misa, and number 3 on the list is James Higgins. It is seen that this draft has some very good players at the top. It's seen as thinning out pretty quickly after that. That's where you got to have all the good scouting. And when we have a draft like this, it is common to see then players who are ranked as second rounders jump up, first rounders drop down. It makes for a more all over the place draft, because usually when you don't have that star value in the middle of the first round, then teams are saying, well, we like this guy, they like that guy, well, we're going to take that. Like, there's usually that difference of opinion. And so it makes things a lot more unpredictable, which I think makes for kind of a fun draft. And of course, we'll live stream the NHL draft here, and we'll live stream the draft lottery as well. I always do a reaction for that. I haven't decided if I'll wear Bruins or Canucks gear. Kind of sad I have that choice this year, but hey, it happens. The hockey gods were nice to me last year, so I'm paying this year. Gabriel Landeskog is returning from his AHL stint. I'm not surprised. No one is surprised. Colorado finished out the regular season, so now Landeskog's good to go for the first game of the playoffs. And there you go. Landeskog looked good in his AHL trip, and I know I've seen people saying, well, that's just the AHL and that's different. Look, the AHL is pretty good hockey. The AHL, those players are really good. We've seen a number of players come up from the AHL down the stretch here and play pretty well at the NHL level. For Landeskog to play well in the AHL tells you, yeah, he's back. And so it'll be interesting to see what his role is with the Colorado Avalanche and how much that boosts them. I think Colorado is playing better hockey right now than Dallas. So that series, to me, I haven't looked at the voting at this point, but it should be pretty close to 50-50. I honestly think that, because you can make an argument for either team at this point. And I'll try to do that when we get to the previews. If you're wondering when I'm going to be doing the previews, I wait until both teams have played all 82 games so we can get all the stats on the board and everything, and then do the full-on preview. So that's when you'll start seeing those previews, is when teams have played that final game of the season. Lane Hutson just continues to break records. He got his 65th point. 65th is not a thing. 65th is. And he gets the 65th point. New rookie record by a defenseman in franchise history. Montreal's history is over a century long, so that's pretty impressive. Lane Hutson's had a ridiculous season. He is going to win the Calder Trophy. We can all act surprised when it happens, but that's where this is leading. He's going to win the Calder Trophy this year, and rightfully so. And then the question becomes, so is Hutson going to be a Norris winner at some point in his career? My answer to that would be probably yes. At some point, his game will continue to improve. And if anybody's going to bring up the defensive aspects of his game, A, I think that gets overblown as a weakness, and B, players on the defensive side of things usually get better defensively as they get used to the NHL and as the seasons pass. It's similar to centers in the NHL when they come in. Usually they're really bad at face-offs, but as the years go by, they figure it out and they get much, much better at it. All right, let's get into the preview for tonight. 10 games in the National Hockey League. And again, this is the final night that we'll have 10 games until next season. So I'm kind of excited. We've got 4 games starting at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, 2 half an hour later, 2 half an hour after that. So there'll be 8 games on at the same time at that point. Then there's one at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, and then there's a 7:30 start in Seattle. Why? So, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Put it on at 4 o'clock. Do them all at 4 o'clock. I'll fight through it, and then that's the last night of the season where I have 10 games. But 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, the New Jersey Devils in Boston against the Bruins, a game that does not mean anything to either team. For New Jersey, they have 2 games left in the regular season. For Boston, this is their final game. Bringing to an end a very disappointing season for Boston, and apparently there aren't going to be any kind of changes when it comes to the brain trust in Boston, but it doesn't mean we're not going to see a change behind the bench. I would think that's most likely to be a big change for them going into next season. I do think we see a new coach. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start, Toronto in Buffalo against the Sabres. All Toronto needs is a point. They get a point, they clinch the Atlantic Division. They do have 2 games left to do it, but tonight in Buffalo might be their best opportunity. For Buffalo, they also have 2 games left in the season, wrapping up what has been a disappointing year. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start, Chicago in Ottawa against the Sens. For Chicago, this is their final game. They're coming off a shootout victory last night against Montreal, and I think that game showed last night too. Chicago is not a doormat at this stage, and I think they're going to be pretty good next year. All the talk is they're going to be very aggressive in the offseason when it comes to free agents and whatnot. So look out for Chicago next year. Ottawa, 2 games left in their season. We know they're the number 1 wild card. So lots of guys making their NHL debuts right now. Lots of young guys getting called up. And I could fill the board, but why? 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start. Columbus in Philadelphia against the Flyers. Columbus, they have to win. They have to win out. And they have to hope that Montreal fails against Carolina. What's interesting is the idea of Carolina beating Montreal isn't that crazy. And after this game against Philadelphia, Columbus's last game, I do believe, is against the New York Islanders. So this is a winnable 2-game set for Columbus, a team that showed in back-to-back games against Washington just how much fight they got in them at this point. I don't care too much who wins between Montreal and Columbus. As a YouTuber, Montreal would be better for the channel, but as a storyline, Columbus and Montreal both provide fantastic opportunities. A lot to discuss for both teams. So I'm just enjoying this. I'll have the popcorn ready. For Philadelphia, they have 2 games left, and we'll see how much fight they have in them tonight against a very motivated Columbus team. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, the Battle of Florida. This could be a preview of the first round. All Florida really has to do is make sure Tampa Bay loses tonight, or that they even if it's in overtime, if Tampa Bay doesn't get 2 points, then they can't get first place. Florida, this being their final game, they can't pass Tampa and get second place, but they can guarantee Tampa's their opponent in the first round. For Tampa, they have 2 games left in the season, and they cannot afford for Toronto to get a point either tonight or in their last game. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, Washington in New York against the Islanders. The Islanders have 2 games left, including that game against Columbus I mentioned before, whereas Washington, they have 2 games left as well. And, I mean, it's hard at this time of year to really interpret just how well or how poorly a team's playing over the last 10 games going into the playoffs. But I do think there's some real reasons for concern with Washington. They desperately miss Protas. Thompson, they miss Thompson. I don't know if the Washington Capitals look all that scary going into the playoffs right now, and they need this last 2 games to really tune this up and figure something out. At least start looking like the team they were throughout the better parts of their season. 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, Utah wraps up their season tonight in St. Louis against the Blues. A regulation win for the Blues clinches. I'm not getting into all the scenarios because it just ends up being a lot. They just need to win in regulation against Utah at home, which sounds simple enough. Utah coming off a 7-3 win over Nashville, but that means Utah on the second half of a back-to-back. St. Louis has to win this. They really do. 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific start. Anaheim with 2 games left in their season. They're in Minnesota. Minnesota, this is their final game as well. Minnesota only needs 1 point against Anaheim in order to clinch a playoff spot. So the odds are in favor of both St. Louis and Minnesota clinching tonight. However, teams have been struggling to clinch. That's why on the Montreal game last night I had a little Homer Simpson, the laughing with the finger pointing at the camera. Because if you fail to clinch, and I'm going to be using that magnet too if teams fail to eliminate a team in the playoffs. Came up with that last night. I was like, yeah, that's an interesting idea. I like adding magnets because, I mean, the reviews, I got to add something to it, a little bit of something to punch it up. So, Minnesota's final game. We'll see how things go with them tonight against Anaheim. 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific start. Vegas in Calgary. Calgary is in need of winning both of their final games. And they will know by the end of their game whether or not it matters. St. Louis and Minnesota could both go final and eliminate Calgary, and that could be it. But Vegas could eliminate Calgary. Vegas has 2 games left. Their last game is in Vancouver. Calgary 2 games left, and they have to win both. And I don't anticipate Vegas playing their top guys. Most teams are going to be resting a lot of players at this point because the playoffs are on Saturday. We'll see how that goes. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific start between LA and Seattle, a game that does not matter. LA on the second half of back-to-backs, and I don't expect a full lineup for the Kings. They still have 2 games left, though. For Seattle, this is their final game. So there might be a bit of a push by Seattle because it's their final game. And that may be successful because LA doesn't really have anything to play for. This is the most difficult time of year to try to predict games. So let me know your picks for tonight. Do your best because it is very difficult to predict what's going to happen when the games don't mean a lot to teams. But let me know your thoughts on the news items as well on the board. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.